Hi everyone, welcome to our ongoing series on how to implement a life operating system by defining what matters most to us in life, then working toward it consistently. This is the second part of a two-part series. This video covers annual planning and how to design an amazing and highly effective year to come. The previous video was on the annual review, focusing on learning from our past year to be more effective going forward. I recommend watching that video first before this one. It's linked in the show notes below. This video is a favorite of mine every year, and it's particularly important because how we start things has a disproportionate impact on how those events or time cycles go. This happens at the month level. How we start our month has a disproportionate impact on the rest of the time throughout the month. How we start our weeks has an impact on how the rest of our week goes. And this happens even at the daily level. That's why we had a previous video on how to prime ourselves at the beginning of each day, a short 15-minute routine that sets us up to have highly effective days throughout the rest of the hours in the day. This is true at the annual level as well. How we start our year has a disproportionate impact on how the rest of the year plays out. So we want to start with a lot of reflection and deliberate vision on how we want the year to go, and that's going to set us up and put into motion a process that's going to give us a more effective year than if we just winged it. So that's what this video is all about. Getting off to a great start in the new year and mapping it out so that you have guardrails to keep you on track and a clear game plan so you're not just going off the cuff. You're actually implementing something by design in the direction that matters to you. This annual planning process works even if you're not using our Pillars, Pipelines, and Vaults system that much of the previous videos in this channel have been all about. This functions as a standalone process, though it has significant benefits when integrated with the larger PPV setup and Notion covered across this channel. We have separate videos on the monthly and weekly review, which I'll link to in the show notes below as well. When using the monthly and weekly reviews already, all of that flows up and informs our annual review. So there are a lot of emergent properties when using the whole system, but most fundamentally, this is a high-level planning process to ensure the efforts you make day by day are focused in the right direction on the things that really matter. I mentioned this in the previous video, but it bears repeating here. It's better to be inefficiently working in the right direction than efficiently working in the wrong direction. Productivity is not what matters. Productivity is just doing things more efficiently. This does not make big leaps forward in life. Doing the right things in the right direction is far more important than any productivity gains. This annual review and planning process identifies the right things for you in your life. Then the PPV system turbocharges life prioritization and alignment between your highest aspirations and your daily actions. For a limited time after posting this video, I will make the Notion template shown in this video available as part of the free template pack that I share along with newsletter signups, which is also free. You can always unsubscribe, but I hope you'll give the newsletter a chance. I work very hard to pack it with my best thinking. If you already subscribe to the newsletter, just submit the form again to get the link. It won't add you a second time if you use the same email address. The template will have all the questions and frameworks, but it cannot have the embedded linked databases since they need to be connected to the databases that you use in your own life operating system. In the template, I have markers on what to embed where. If you don't use Notion at all or don't use the PPV Life OS, no problem. Just use bullet point lists in each of the locations where the template indicates to insert databases. It works either way. Now, let's dive in. Starting in the alignment zone, which is where we access it within the Pillars, Pipelines, and Vaults system. Again, if you're not using PPV, just go straight to the template. But if you're in PPV, you can access it in the review cycles segment. We have our weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annual, open annual. As I mentioned in the last video, you can choose whether you want to do this process in the previous year's entry in the database or the upcoming year. Since this is the planning video, I'll do it in the upcoming year. I personally tend to do the review and planning in the upcoming year, but it's really a personal call. Open it to the full page and we scroll down to our annual planning process. We're going to conduct this segment here. In the annual review, we had the accomplishments and disappointments database. We went through that in the previous video, so I just removed it here, but you'll see it in the template as shown in the previous video, which is linked below. Then we come into our 12-month assessment segment here. In the previous video, we did our reflection and we did our interpretation. Now, having done that, particularly the interpretation segment, where we really boiled it down to the things that we value most in life and that we find most meaningful in life, we now go to our visualization process for the upcoming 12 months. And then after that, we'll get into our system implementation. So now we're visualizing. We have a few questions here, but I really recommend spending a lot of thought and time on them. So first and foremost, describe what my life will be like in 12 months. And visualize this, really feel it viscerally. What I do is I write out several paragraphs describing my life in 12 months, really picturing it, feeling it, making it a tactile, tangible, vibrant, highly detailed vision. Really talk about what your typical day is like, what you've accomplished in the past 12 months. Again, visualizing forward 12 months, what you're on the verge of doing, what you're set up well for. Really paint the ideal scenario. Paint what you want to happen, the place you want to be in 12 months. Either write a few paragraphs painting that picture, or you can bullet point, whichever you prefer. But draw a picture with words and sentences and phrases of what you hope and expect will be like. So you can really feel this. So it should be big reaches, ambitious stuff, but realistic. So reaches, but not fantasies. This should be viable, but really ambitious. You're gonna have to grow and build and become a new person in some ways to achieve it, but in ways that you can do that over a 12-month period. Paint that picture, because you will have just gone through a lot of reflection of the past 12 months, identifying why these things mattered. So now you can really paint a picture of what you want to achieve based on what you have learned about yourself from these past exercises. Okay, after that, ask yourself, who do I need to become to achieve those things? And we'll break this down. How do I need to change and evolve personally to make that vision of what I just painted a reality? What do I need to learn? What do I need to figure out? What knowledge do I need to gain? And then how do my habits and routines need to change in order to make that picture I just painted a reality? So these are not simple questions. First of all, just describing this is a process that's going to take time. It's going to take hours, maybe even a whole day, or maybe part of a day and you come back the next day. So you have some time in between. And then you're really figuring out, who do I need to become? What do I need to bring into my life to evolve to the point where this can become my reality within 12 months? Really paint this out. Now, you ask, what is holding me back from that happening? What are the obstacles? Be very clear and explicit. What are the barriers I need to get through? And then finally, how can I overcome these obstacles? You can see what we're doing here. We're painting a picture, an aspirational vision of something we want. We're identifying how we need to grow to achieve it. We're identifying what is blocking us. And then we're really explicitly addressing how we break through those barriers. This is how you make things happen in life. This is the process. So do not shortchange this. Give this time and effort and deep reflection, revisiting it a few times with some breaks in between so you can come back to it fresh. All right, it's a simple thing for us to walk through now, but that is a thorough process to go through, and I encourage you to do it. I do it every year. Okay, having done that, we will check this off. You'll typically do it with the reflection part. I've broken it up into 2 parts, so be sure to see the previous video on how to do the reflection and interpretation immediately prior to rolling into this visualization. All right, then we move on to our guiding principles. If you're in the PPV system, you'll be familiar with these. If not, we had a video on the alignment zone that touched on this. Guiding principles are a summary of what we value most in life and what we find most meaningful in life. So I did touch on this in the alignment zone. In my course, we go very deep into this. We have an extremely thorough process, but I may do a special training on this. Let me know if that would be of interest in the comments below. I want to see what the interest level is in a workshop specifically on that. But if you are not deep into the PPV system and haven't gone through the past training, then simply make a bullet point list of what you value most in life and what gives life meaning to you. We talked about this in the previous video. the final question here on what themes and reasons kept coming up when you asked the why questions. So that previous video walks through how to build this out. This is part of your planning for the next 12 months. This identifies what is most important to you in life. This is your North Star. They are your guiding principles. So you need to have some sense of this defined in order to plan anything in the future. All right, so now we get into the system implementation. In the previous video, we did this for the purpose of reflection. And so we were looking at the past 12 months. Now in the planning process, we're doing system implementation looking forward for the next 12 months. So we have a step-by-step process here. We're going to go through these segments. If you are familiar with the PPV system, the Pillars, Pipelines, and Vaults system that we've been talking about throughout this channel, these will look familiar. If not, I'll give you a brief summary, but every single one of these segments has its own video that will explain in much more depth what each of them represent and how each of them help advance your life in some important way. So we're going to go through check by check. Each of these check boxes is a database down here. So we start with pillars. Are there any pillars you want to modify or add? These are categorizations of different slices of your life. Do you want to refine them, rename them, add some, remove some, merge some? We're just sort of doing a little trimming and refining here to make sure these are the right pillars for you going into the new year. That's simple. Typically, these don't change very often. And in most cases, you won't need to do anything. You can just move on, but ask yourself the question. We have an entire previous video on pillars. I'll link to that below. If pillars are a new concept to you, go ahead and just check out that previous video, then come back and it'll make perfect sense. Next, we have habits and routines, which also have a whole video previously in this series that will give you a deep dive into how to implement and design habits and routines that will change your life. Building good habits and routines is a cornerstone of an effective, satisfying, happy life. So control your life by designing deliberately your own habits and routines. Don't just react to everything you run into. Design the habits and routines, the consistency you want to have in your life in order to build towards the things that you want. So previously we looked at these from a review perspective. Now we're looking at them from a planning perspective. Are there any to modify or add? Are they assigned to the ideal time with the ideal frequency going forward? So now we're designing the game plan going forward, at least for the next quarter. You can always change these, but we're going to, for this moment in time, in the next segment of your life, lay out all the habits and routines that you think will be valuable to you. This is a very short example list, but you'll have a much longer list. Some are easy. Some are things that you want to start, but you're having a hard time. The ones that are difficult, if you look at the habits and routines video we did previously, the difficult ones, you want to do one of two things or both. One is to actually map them out to a very specific time on a schedule throughout the day, throughout the week, so that they're assigned. It might be bundling them with another group of habits. That bundle would be set for a very specific time. Put them in your calendar you cannot forget, and or put them in your daily tracking database. So you will have a habit tracker and check and add data to the ones that you are trying to implement and struggling with so that you can have daily accountability and a track record on how well you're succeeding with them so that you can monitor them more closely. That's just a quick summary. There's more detail in the habits and routines video, which I will link to below. Now scrolling down to our value goals, this is a more unique aspect of the Pillars, Pipelines, and Vaults system. These are goals based on the things you value most in life. These are your life's aspirations. They don't change very often. They're very long-term. They're emotional. They are deeply connected to who you are and what you want to become and who you want to be and the things you want to achieve in this precious time we have alive on Earth here. So these are life aspirations. Now in the planning stage, are there any you want to modify or add? Just refining, though typically these do not change very often. They can change anytime you want to change them, but these are long-term dreams. So they don't typically change that often. You may not be changing any, but review them, refine them as appropriate. Now each value goal is connected to a goal outcome. There's a whole video on value goals and goal outcomes as well. Goal outcomes are tangible, measurable goals, process-oriented, and super actionable. So these are steps towards our value goals and how we get there. But we start with defining our dreams and then we break them down into very specific outcomes we're working toward. So our value goals here are connected to our goal outcomes. Our goal outcomes are connected to our value goals. in the videos dedicated to these, go into much more detail, but this is a step in which we define the goal outcomes we want that will move us toward our value goals in the quarters to come over the upcoming 12 months. Note that we are filtering on all of the outcome goals that are not complete. If you have a lot of very forward-thinking ones, which you typically don't, but if you did, you might add a filter just for the upcoming 4 quarters. But if you don't have too many, it's good to see even beyond those 4 quarters to whatever you have planned coming up. And then you will set the active ones on the ones you are actively working toward. You could have a bunch queued up for next up and future. Again, this is all covered in the video on goal outcomes, but for now, we're just reviewing whether we have the right ones queued up. They're set to active. And then as always, outcome goals are achieved one of 2 ways, either by having projects assigned to them to advance them or habits and routines that are regularly recurring. As long as that their habit and routine is assigned or an active project is assigned, then each active goal will be progressing. Either can advance goal outcomes, and now we're mapping out the goal outcomes, the results on a big outcome scale that we want to map out with the quarter defined on when you intend to complete each of these goal outcomes. And then they could have subsequent ones queued up to begin once you finish one here. The primary way to advance outcome goals is through projects, and just as we have all these projects linked to outcome goals here, we have the projects with their outcome goals linked here, and we're monitoring progress based on the number of action items or tasks assigned to each project. So we're lining up the projects we have planned, making certain ones active, being very careful not to activate too many projects at once. It's far better to have a few active projects that you're making real progress on than have a lot of active projects that all of them are moving at a snail's pace. The vast majority of people who are not implementing a very deliberate system like this have way too many projects in an active state. Part of the value of this system and this planning process is it reveals to you how many active projects you have underway. And it forces you to be realistic and say, it is impossible to do that many active projects at once. You really should try to get this down to 3 to 5. 6 or so is okay. Once you get into the 8, 9, 10, you have too many projects. Decide what matters most, prioritize them. The others don't have to be deleted. They just have to be moved to next up, future, someday maybe, or you could break future into future 1, 2, 3 to sequence them. But limit the number of active projects to the things that really matter to advance your life and move toward your goal outcomes, move toward your outcome goals, and therefore your value goals. Narrow it down to very few, 3 to 5 if possible, 6 to 7, really max. In few cases, if you have multiple businesses, you might have more, but in most people's lives, you can really get this down to 4 or 5 active ones. Now there's some that go into a hold state and are just minimally active. That's fine. You don't have to count that as a full active one. But in terms of the ones you're really pouring yourself into, nothing will help you advance forward in life toward your dreams faster than reducing the number of projects you have underway at a given time. And that forces you to choose the most important ones. So those actually get done and you actually move forward. Then for the active ones, you will open them up and make sure they have active tasks. This whole template inside lets you see which are the activated tasks with due dates, DO dates, the date you intend to do it. That is not a DUE date when you have to have it completed by. That's a separate entry for completion. The DO date is the date you plan to do it. This is a powerful concept. And then in the action zone, another part of the PPV system, they will automatically roll up and be queued up for your day like magic, and you will focus exclusively on those actions for that one day. And that's how you align your high-level aspirations in life with your daily and hourly actions so that you are working on the right things, not just working hard in general, but you're working hard on the most specific things that will advance you quickest and most directly towards your life's aspirations. That is the power of this whole system and the power of annual planning to make sure you're working on the right things and you have incredible clarity on what those things are. So the active ones are lined up here. As you finish these projects in your weekly and monthly reviews, you'll bring in new projects based on importance, priority, as aligns with your goal outcomes and your value goals. And then you have an incredibly clear design on what to do going into the new year, broken down into small day-by-day steps, but clearly streamlined and directly connected to your highest level aspirations in life. At this point, we can go back up here and check off that we have completed all of these. And then we come down and look at our quarters view and we select the planning. And if I didn't mention it, I mentioned it in the previous video. We have toggles for each of these goal outcomes, projects, and quarters to view the review view or view the planning view. Review view is the previous 4 quarters, planning is the upcoming 4 quarters. So in each of these, in the planning stage, we're making sure we're in the planning setting. And then we're going to see the upcoming 4 quarters. And this will be a beautiful view of everything coming up, very well organized, your game plan for the year. I highly recommend you have goal outcomes mapped out for all 4 quarters coming up. You don't have to have projects for every quarter. You just need to have projects properly lined up and assigned for the first quarter, maybe the second quarter, but have the right goal outcomes. And then as you do your monthly reviews and your quarterly reviews, you'll queue these up as time approaches. But some of these will be rolling, some of these will be changing, but you want to map out your bigger, broader brushstroke outcome goals for the whole year, maybe even an additional 6 or 12 months beyond that if you want. But the further you get out, the looser it becomes. For the next 4 quarters, map out your big, broad stroke outcome goals, and then start for the more immediate quarters, putting more detail into the projects that are going to help you achieve those. And there you have it. It's not too overwhelming or crazy of a process, but if you implement this, you are going to be charging into the new year with so much clarity, force, momentum, and things are just going to happen. You cannot not get things done with a system and design and plan that's this clear, this explicit, and built so deeply on the things you value most in life and find meaningful in life that you identified and learned by studying your past behaviors, actions, and interactions. So this goes deep into who you are and then lays out a very specific path to success built specifically for you and what you care most about in life and what you want to achieve in life. So this is the way I do it. This is the way I highly recommend you do it if you want to make big things happen in the new year. Now, just a quick note for all of these databases, you can just delete. If you have databases for a life operating system, you have to link to the existing ones you're already using. If you're not using any, just do bullet point lists for each of these based on the definitions here or the more thorough definitions in the previous videos for each of these segments that go deeper into each segment. All of those will be listed in the show notes below. So with this, we're going to have a great kickoff to the new year. I've got a lot of ideas on new videos to come. I've got videos on focus, on habits and routines, on identity sculpting and mindset. We're going to revisit some of those topics and go deeper into them. We're going to cover them from different angles because they're so fundamental to achieving the things we want to achieve in life. There isn't just one video that's going to cover it. So we're going to explore these topics deeper from more angles, of course, covering new features in software like Notion. That's going to be super helpful for us. So a ton is in the pipeline, really doubling down. One of my priorities for the new year is this YouTube channel, and I could not possibly be more excited about what's coming. So if this is of interest, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to get updates on future videos. And please hit like if you found this video valuable. Leave thoughts or questions below, or join us in the Notion Life Design course to explore these topics more extensively. That's all at notionlifedesign.com. I also write a newsletter on increasing human capability. I give away several of my best Notion templates to anyone who subscribes to the free newsletter. The newsletter link is also below in the show notes. Thanks for watching. Lots more to come.